Fault number 89 is Ben Ikin. Ben has the distinction of being the youngest player to be selected to play Origin football when, at the age of 18, he was chosen to play for Queensland in Game 1 of the 1995 series. Ben went on to play 17 matches for Queensland and 2 tests for Australia. He was the last North Sydney player to be selected to play for the Kangaroos. Ben made his debut for the Gold Coast, played in North Sydney's last game in the top flight, a win over the Cowboys, and was a member of the Brisbane Broncos premiership winning side of 2000. After his early retirement due to injury, Ben forged a wonderful career in the media and now has the responsibility of being the head of rugby league in Queensland.
Well, Ben Ikin, thanks for your time. What does it mean to you to be a FOG?
Well, it was the fulfilment of a dream I had since I was a kid to wear the maroon jersey. So to get the call up in 1995, in what was a pretty controversial year, at the age I was, 18, it's kind of a bit otherworldly, to be honest with you. So for any kid that gets to, sort of dream something big and then eventually one day achieve it, is pretty special. So that kind of what it means to me. I had a lot of help along the way. Starts with my parents. I had lots of junior coaches, good people in my life that made my rugby league journey really good. Landed a great coach at Palm Beach Crumman High School in Rob Patterson, who was a very important figure in my life. So I guess when I reflect, you arrive somewhere, achieve a goal, fulfill a dream, you get a lot of self-satisfaction out of that, but it reminds you that, the journey you go on to get there takes many good people to have it realised.
And you started your rugby league journey, I suppose, a little bit later than most. How did a young bloke growing up on the Gold Coast first start playing rugby league?
I took up rugby league primarily because in 1988, my primary school, Crumman State School, started inter-school sport for the first time. The two options were rugby league and netball. So I went the way of rugby league, and it was the same year that the Gold Coast Giants came into the New South Wales Rugby League, as did the Brisbane Broncos. So there's a bit of buzz around rugby league in the southeast of Queensland. I got swept up in it. From the moment I started playing, I realised I could do this thing okay, which made it more enjoyable. Joined a good club called the Tugun Seahawks. Ended up in a great rugby league high school, Palm Beach Currumbin. And with all those sort of ingredients in the mix, I got a good rugby league education. I was around a lot of good people. It kind of went from being nothing in my life to being, probably the biggest part of my life for a long time.
Well, you've gone from, 1988 to playing your first game of rugby league, choosing that over netball, to 7 years later, making your first grade debut for the Gold Coast Seagulls. I mean, it's an extraordinary journey. What was it like as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old competing against men at that level? It's
the big significant step that you take coming out of high school, where you play age group football only, to then being bumped up to open age. I still remember my first reserve grade trial for the Gold Coast Seagulls, which was my first club. Just kind of being petrified that all of a sudden I was going from playing boys to playing men. And this gap that I sort of perceived in my head around the physicality wasn't ultimately as big as what I thought it would be. In fact, I played quite well in that first trial and adapted, transitioned, whatever you want to call it, pretty quickly to open age football. So it was a really speedy journey from, taking up the game to playing at the elite level. You are right. My first year in first grade playing open age football, I ended up playing State of Origin. It was a bit of a whirlwind.
Well, that was going to be my next question. You're playing for the Seagulls, first year in grade football, and all of a sudden you get selected in an Origin. You mentioned earlier how, it was a tumultuous time. It was the middle of the Super League war. And so you get this call and you've gone from playing for Tugun to playing for Queensland. What was the thought process? What was it like taking that next step in your first year?
I think we're lucky young men that there's something biological about, I see it in my boys now, under the age of 25, we've kind of got this fog on the brain. You know, I think it stems from the fact we were asked pretty young to go and kill woolly mammoths or something. And so for me, that was my headspace, you know, in 1995. Yes, it all came very quick. Yes, I had to step up and play men for the first time. Yes, I had to play reserve grade and then first grade and then origin. But you're not thinking too deeply, right? You've just kind of biologically, you are made to take on the next challenge. So every new challenge that came along, even though I was terribly nervous before each event, I just jumped in feet first, and good things seemed to happen. I mean, I didn't get it right all the time in that first year playing elite rugby league, but that's the great thing about being in a team sport. You're not on your own. You're not a golfer. You're not a swimmer. You're not losing by yourself, and you're certainly not winning by yourself. And so luckily for me in that first year, even though the Gold Coast Seagulls weren't going great, I had a lot of good people around me that supported me, you know, because they could see that things were happening really quick for me. And of course, how are you not going to do well when you're playing under a genius coach like Paul Fatty Vaughton at the origin level, surrounded by a whole heap of passionate Queenslanders? So while it might have come quick, you know, I was at an age where I wasn't thinking too deeply about life, let alone rugby league.
Did it help, do you think, the fact that you weren't the only one in that environment that was thrust into a position that they may not have thought they were ready for? Not so much ready for, but expected to be in?
Probably. You know, it was how would you describe that? It sort of very quickly became a shared responsibility, you know, like on paper, you know, that Queensland team was nowhere near as strong as New South Wales. So I know subconsciously, probably more so for the experienced guys, they knew that, you know, we needed to come together as a team, else we were going to be no chance. And Fatty expertly mapped that out for us in the first meeting we had. You know, that we look at them on paper, they've got these players, and, you know, we've got guys that have come out of reserve grade, you know, multiple guys making their debut. So we need to buy into something bigger than ourselves. And he painted this picture about how we were going to do that, about how tough the challenge was going to be, and everybody just bought into it. And so pretty much the whole 6 weeks, every training session, every drinking session, every game, we knew that if we didn't adopt a team-first mentality and understand that we were doing it not just for ourselves, but a whole lot of people in Queensland, that we weren't going to win.
Looking back now, at that time, that 1995 year particularly, with the Gold Coast, you played 8 games in that year for the Gold Coast. You played 3 for Queensland. Yeah. So you played nearly 50%, 50% of your games there for your state. It's a remarkable achievement. How do you reflect on that now, that 1 year in particular, 95?
I think I've already used the word whirlwind is probably the best way to describe it. It all happened so fast, and there's so many exaggerated forces at play. You know, I was so young. You know, the game was at war. Origin was so important. It was even more important that Queensland won. You know, we were so far off the pace on paper compared to New South Wales. I was kind of in a club team that was struggling, you know, and then went to an Origin team that was winning, and, you know, so my head was just spinning. And
well, how did your feet stay on the ground? Who helped you through that?
No, they didn't. They didn't. So, like, on the journey up, it was all sort of made sense. And then, you know, by the time I'd finished the Origin series, I won't lie, I had an inflated sense of self. I lost my way a bit with my preparation. You know, I formed a lot of bad habits and started to take shortcuts. And I kind of went from playing reserve grade at the Gold Coast Seagulls at the start of the year, sort of getting into an Origin team, and then I finished playing reserve grade at the Gold Coast Seagulls by the end of the year. So I got a lot of things right on the way up, but very quickly that turned around because I started to make shortcuts in my approach to professional rugby league.
What woke you up?
Nothing. I kind of finished the year and I was too young. I wasn't emotionally mature enough, or didn't think deeply enough about kind of what had happened in the 12 months. The Gold Coast Seagulls folded, and I just had an opportunity to get to the North Sydney Bears. So I packed my bags, headed off to Sydney. I was in a different environment at that point. At the North Sydney Bears had taken a really professional approach to elite rugby league. We had some really good professionals in the team: Billy Moore, Gary Larson, Jason Taylor was our captain. And being in that different environment where they were challenging me more often to be better, particularly in the prep phase, helped me get my career and life back on track.
What do you think, and I know this is, ifs, buts and maybes, but what do you think might have happened to you if the Gold Coast hadn't folded and you stayed on the Gold Coast? Was that move to North Sydney pivotal in turning your one-year career around? I know it sounds melodramatic.
So I'll answer your second question first. Yes, the move was pivotal, and the truth is, if I had stayed at the Gold Coast Seagulls, I don't know. Maybe I would have figured it out either way. Maybe the bottoming out at the end of 1995 would have been enough for me, wherever I landed, to work hard to get my career back on track. But I know I'm very thankful that I ended up at North Sydney, and again, which has been a big part of my journey, I got very lucky having some good people in my life who cared enough to challenge me.
So 1995 was an extraordinary year. You end up at North Sydney, who are on the verge of becoming, and potentially at the time, one of the powerhouses in the game, getting so close, a passionate supporter base, hadn't won a premiership since 1922, and getting so close. What was that time like, being a part of one of those foundation clubs?
Oh, I loved it. I loved being in rugby league in Sydney, where the game was born. There's a real history, if you care to explore it, not just about that club, but about how the game was born and grew and evolved, and the many clubs that have played a role in what has become, probably the number one tier, the number one tier one sport in the country, in my view. And so as a young guy, you could smell the difference, you could taste the difference, you could feel the difference of rugby league on the Gold Coast versus, being part of rugby league in the city where it was born. So I probably didn't overtly chase the history of the club when I first got there as an 18, 19-year-old, but I certainly appreciated the experiences I had with past players, and the sharing of stories and the drinking of beers, not just with my teammates but with past players from the Bears, learning and understanding the history of the club. It just added another layer to my love for the game.
Having played those 3 games in 95, to then be selected again and to end up playing 17 games for Queensland, what does that mean for you as a player to know that you were selected that many times to represent your state?
I'm very proud. I'll be enormously proud just to play one game for Queensland. That's fulfilling that dream was such a highlight of my life. To be able to have that first experience and then get invited back 16 more times is just, incredible. I love the whole Origin concept. I love what the Maroons stand for, not just the men's side, but the women's side now. We know in Queensland that the whole state walks taller when the Maroons are winning. And so for me to have been part of that and physically experienced what a Maroons team can do for the state's sense of self is just like, it's hard to wrap words around, right? So for me, having played the 17 games, yes, 17's a sort of bigger number than some, but now when I look, it's a smaller number than many. We've had some great players go through there. There's a great history around Origin, and I'm just enormously proud that I was part of it at some point.
Well, how would you like to be the owner of one of these? A FOGS authentic game ball signed by Wally Lewis, at the 2023 Wally Lewis medalist Reuben Cotter. Now, all you have to do is subscribe, like, and drop a comment below. And each week, gentlemen, we'll be giving away one of these footballs to one of the viewers of the FOGS Queenslander podcast. Well done.
Well, it's good to be able to hand them on to the general public who like it, as long as we don't get blamed for breaking one of Mum's windows when they're kicking it around the backyard or tossing it around.
But this will be framed in a nice
Reuben Cotter's name. Wow.
Do you know how to subscribe and like and do all that, Gilly? No?
We can help you, mate. We can help you.
Help me out, fellas.
The two daughters can help him out.
So we have one of these to give away each week until stocks run out, until Wally gets sick and tired of signing them and Reuben Cotter disappears. But just subscribe to our channel, FOGS Queenslander Podcast. Write a comment below and click that like button. Everyone goes into the draw, and we've got one of these to give away each week.
A lot of the players I've had the fortune to talk to about their careers at Origin level and also at the NRL level, because you play so many games, things do become a blur. Are there any Origin matches or Origin experiences, I suppose 95's up there, that stand out for you as you reminisce or look back with me on your career?
Yeah, look, 95 is unbelievable, and I've spoken to that many times, from, the first day being in a lift with the coach who was clueless, had no idea who I was, to think that, from that, Fatty Vaughton was able to take a group of nobodies, or Neville's, as I think he affectionately called us, to win a series 3-0. Yes, magnificent. I loved the 98 series. It was my first chance to get to play in a combined side, because I played 95, missed 96 when they come back together. The game split again in 97. So for me, being selected in 98, first off the bench and then working my way into the starting side under Wayne Bennett, who was a, super coach, as we all know, playing alongside, Gordon Tallis, Wendell Saylor, Alfie Langer, Kevy Walters, meeting and playing with those guys. That was probably the next part of the journey for me that I will never forget. We won that series. We were locked at 1-1, and I still remember when Elf came in ahead of the third game, and all I'd seen him do in the first two preps was take the piss out of everybody, play darn good footy. But then by the time we get to game 3, it's 1-1, and he sort of stands up in front of the team the night before the game and tells us how much winning the third game will mean to him and what it'll mean to Queensland. It was kind of similar to the speech Fatty gave ahead of the series way back in 1995. So the 95 series and the 98 series are the two standouts for me.
You also have, honour may not be the right word, but for us North Sydney Bears fans, maybe it is, of playing in the Bears' last ever game against the Cowboys, which was a win for North Sydney to finish their time in the NRL. So that gave you the opportunity to return home, which you'd wanted to do beforehand, but from my perspective, gladly the Bears didn't let you go. What was it like coming home?
Well, two things. I'm very close to my family, so being away in Sydney for 4 years was sort of pulling at me by the end, which is probably why I tried to find ways to get back to southeast Queensland previously. So to be able to come home, be close to family was magnificent. The second part to that was I was stepping into an organisation that is world class. The Brisbane Broncos were being coached by Wayne Bennett. Kevy Walters was our captain in 2000. Then you go through the team: Thorne, Webke, Sivanasiva, Lockyer, Saylor, Carroll, like De Vere and Prittis, and I'm sort of wedged somewhere in that group. And, first year home, you win a comp, which is, that they are very hard to do, right? Win premierships. So being close to family, being in a great organisation, winning a premiership, to me felt like I'd made the right decision.
Yeah, and having got close with Norths and had a side that potentially could have and should have won a premiership, did it make it even sweeter, the fact that you were able to go a little bit more after being so tantalisingly close? At
that age, I think I might have been 22, 23 when we won the competition in 2000. Again, Potsy, probably not thinking too deeply. At 23, playing a brutal collision sport, you train, you play, you try and win. And ultimately, if you win enough, you win a comp. But if I look back now, I know in my heart that I think it was 97, 96, 97, maybe 98, the Bears just didn't get it right in exactly the right time. We lost a couple of prelims, as you would know, with a very good side. And I probably didn't appreciate how hard it was just to get to that position, let alone win a premiership. And I'll say that even in 2000, coming into the Broncos, where they were just in the business of winning comps, I probably didn't appreciate what we had done that season either. I look back now, and even though I retired pretty young, I think I was damn lucky to be at two clubs that either got that close or ultimately won one, because there's a lot of players, a lot of really, really good players better than me, that go through their whole career and don't even play in a grand final, let alone win a comp.
Who had the biggest influence on your career?
Well, beyond my parents, who created a great foundation, I would say my high school coach, Rod Patterson, who I'm still very close with. He was just a magnificent teacher, mentor. He helped me understand the game in a way that no one had up to that point. And, generally this was the way of all the great recruitment gurus, back 10, 20, 30 years ago, is they had this great capacity to look at you and see the best part of you, sometimes a part of you that you couldn't see in yourself. So I had that from Rod Patterson. I also had it from a guy called Tom Searle, who came along. He was Michael Searle's father, great country footballer himself. He was the recruitment scout for the Gold Coast Seagulls. And I sort of was having this experience with Rod Patterson, who was teaching me and helping me understand the game at a really deep level, and sort of telling me that, I was probably better than what I thought I was. And then that was compounded when Tom Searle came into my life and wanted me to go to the Gold Coast Seagulls and started to give me the same message. So I had these two guys who I really believed in, who believed in me. And that sort of set me up to then take the next step. I move into my professional career, and I have a whole lot of good people, coaches, teammates, come in and out of my life until ultimately I arrive back at the Brisbane Broncos and I get the super coach, who is probably a better man than he is a coach, which is why most teams that kind of fall under his watch end up playing as much for him as they do themselves. And he taught me a whole new lot of life lessons. And I was lucky enough, as you know, to have him remain in my life because I ended up marrying the coach's daughter. So yeah, I've had, in rugby league terms, which has also spilled into my life, some really good people.
Now some unfair questions.
Yeah.
A favourite player that you've played with, someone that you've, admired, standing outside of and thinking, wow, this bloke is something special. Is there someone? Or is that an unfair question?
No, it's good. And I've had a few of them. I love playing with Greg Florimo. You talk about guys that just epitomise clubs or eras or, whatever it might be. Greg Florimo was North Sydney when I was there. He loved that place, and you just can't manufacture that. And beyond that, he was just an enormously talented guy. He could pretty much do anything he put his mind to. The other thing I loved about Flo in the professional era, he continued to occasionally go and work on building sites just because that was part of how he liked to prepare. He needed to keep himself busy, and so a whole lot of things that I loved about Flo on and off the field. I loved playing alongside Alf. When I first got selected in Origin in '98 with that joint team, North Sydney's a very serious club. A lot of serious people, Jason Taylor, Billy Moore, Gary Larson. Flo was a bit of a wag, but, very professional approach. I got selected in that Origin team in '98, and I just couldn't believe that Alfie Langer, who'll go down as one of the greatest players that's ever played the game, could have so much fun and still be so good come game time. It was like the whole thing was like he was still playing junior footy, taking the piss, cutting corners at training, and Wayne just adored him. But the moment you introduced football into anything, bang, the switch went on, and he needed to win. So for me, I reckon Elf showed me another side to the game, that this is a made-up game with made-up rules, as James Graham likes to say, and we don't need to take it so serious all the time. And then my good mate Darren Lockyer, who's one of the greatest winners we've ever seen. I've been playing footy against Lockie since we're about 12 years of age, and he was always going to be great. And he's pretty calm and controlled on the surface, but bubbling away underneath is this perfectionist that just needs to win. And he went on to have one of the great careers of all time.
What about a player from any era that you never got to play with, that you would love to have had a game with?
Very easy. He's got a statue too at the front of Suncorp. Wally Lewis was he was almost bigger than the game in Queensland when he was at the height of his powers. And, he was my whole family's hero. When State of Origin came around, which is how I first got introduced to rugby league, Wally was it. I find it funny that we love Wally that much. I still remember my mum, hating on Wayne Bennett, who sacked Wally Lewis, ended up having to sit at her son's wedding, as I was marrying Wayne Bennett's daughter, how things go full circle. But I can only imagine, particularly at that State of Origin level, what it must have been like to be a teammate of Wally Lewis. He when the biggest moments demanded the biggest plays, he was the one that stepped up and delivered.
Your role now is basically the boss of rugby league in Queensland. How big a challenge is that when you look back on your playing career? How has the playing career helped you for your role as the boss of Queensland Rugby League, and how daunting is that task?
It's less my playing career, it's just the fact that I've been in the game, since I was 11. And, I've had all sorts of different roles. I've done my apprenticeship in rugby league. I've kind of been on boards. I've been in commercial roles. I've been a broadcaster. I've been a junior coach. I've kind of been a volunteer. I guess I've done my trade. I reckon, having been in the game my whole life, and had some other experiences outside the game professionally, has allowed me to ground everything that needs to happen, that people want to happen in rugby league, in practical application. I can go into a junior club and connect very easily with the people who sit on the committee, who are volunteering their time. I can have a conversation with a junior coach. I can sort of move into the statewide comps and sort of sit down and pick the brain of a Host Plus Cup coach, which I really enjoy. I love the game. I'm very curious about the game. I really love the people that work in the game. So because that's the starting point for me, all this other stuff that needs to happen, all the corporate stuff, around professional sport, it just makes it easier for me to connect the two. And because I know the game so well, it's been such a big part of my life, I don't get offended by it either. Which it's hyper-political, but having been part of the politics for so long, it kind of doesn't impact me the way it does others.
And just finally, mate, looking back, now that you're retired from the game as a player, do you reflect, or how do you reflect on your time as a player in the game? What memories do you have, and how do you consider your career?
Look, I probably could have done more if I had have been a bit more disciplined, which generally just comes with age and experience. I retired at 26. So for me, I look back at this sort of 9-year block I had where I probably didn't prepare as well as I should have. But, again, fog on the brain, right? You can't put an old head on young shoulders. That's me now looking back retrospectively. Beyond that, I am just so grateful that the game came into my life, that I was good enough to be thought of highly enough for people to drag me into the professional game, and have 9 years that is just so chock full of so many good memories. that I don't think I would have gotten if I had have chosen any other professional sort of avenue. You know, it's a great game for so many reasons. It's got so many good people in it. A lot of those good people were in my life, and I'll have memories that I will never forget. And I sit here now as a, husband, very happily married for 21 years, with 4 kids, knowing that if rugby league hadn't come into my life, I probably don't meet Beth. I probably don't have my 4 kids. So beyond being able to play the great game, I've got a family who I love dearly because of the great game.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks for watching this episode of the FOGS Queenslander Podcast. If there's a FOG you want to hear from, leave a comment to let us know. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our videos.